Thank you all so much for coming. I'm Jessica Broughton. I work at BNP Paribas, but probably more importantly for this evening, I'm the Vice President of FIAZI. So, yeah, no, I'm not who you're here to see or clap for, but thank you, I appreciate that. I first want to give a very warm welcome to our honorees this evening. We have Chris Gootkind from Loomis and Sales. Oh, it's going to be like a clapping war. I like it. We have Ed Hyman from Evercore ISI. And we have Mike Milken from the Milken Institute. I really hope the three of you have a fabulous time this evening. It's a wonderful occasion. You're here with friends and family, and it's a moment to reflect on your legacies, your professional achievements, and to celebrate that. And speaking of legacies, I also would like to warmly welcome back a number of previous Hall of Fame award winners in the room. Fun fact, this is the largest turnout we've had. There are 14 Hall of Famers in the room right now, not including our honorees. I know, wow, right? Thank you for your ongoing support, and I'm going to quickly call out their names. If you can just raise your hand, we're going to do a little roll call. Ed Altman. Curtis Arledge, who's celebrating 10 years. Joyce Chang, also celebrating 10 years. Dana Emery, John Finnerty, Marty Friedson, Dan Fuss, Lori Goodman, Andrew Calate, Mary Miller, Barbara Novak, Glenn Reynolds, Mark Shankman, and Dick Wilson. I have to let you in a little secret. I'm not much of a baseball fan, but when I learned that Game 5 of the World Series was going to be tonight, I started to pay attention. I ran through a number of scenarios. Could we sweep? Is this going to be a deciding game? Dodgers almost did the sweep for me. I'm not a Dodgers or Yankees fan. I have no horse in this race. But I think it was you, Mike, who said, there will always be baseball, but there will not always be tonight, where we get to honor the three of you and celebrate and be surrounded by your friends and family. So tonight is the perfect night to do that. And if you need to check your phone for a minute, fine, I get it, but just be brief and sort of discreet for me, okay? I am incredibly grateful for having had the opportunity to run this year's Hall of Fame process. It's been a bit of a baptism by fire, but it's actually been a really rewarding, educational, and inspiring endeavor. So before I hand over the mic to our MC for the evening, Lisa, I want to share a little bit about our process and why tonight's honorees should feel so proud to be joining the list of Hall of Famers. Not to get too inside baseball, see what I did there, with you, but the process for selecting, vetting, and confirming our candidates for the Hall of Fame is a thorough one. When the nominating committee, which included some former Hall of Fame members as well as the board, met, one of our key criteria was, must be a giant in their field. Well, I think we can agree that all three of these gentlemen passed the mark there. All three have made lasting contributions to fixed income. They've conducted groundbreaking analysis, and they've developed generations of talent. They've also given back to the broader community via time, leadership, and substantial charitable generosity. They're legends, in a word. FIAZI was founded to promote discussion and education about the intricacies of fixed income markets. I like to call it a safe space to geek out amongst friends. I find it amazing today when someone's surprised you took the time to read something, a filing, a footnote, the fine print, a contract. Just ask Credit Suisse's AT1 bondholders. With the invention of AI and more automation taking place in fast-paced markets, it's even more important to preserve and frankly celebrate the thoughtful, technical, and thorough analysis that all three of these honorees have honed over the years and which FIAZI promotes. But what makes them even more special is their ability to take it a step further. They link the intangible around data and ideas, and they make it into real-world practical concepts. They say those who can't do teach, but I'd argue all three of honorees teach by doing. Not to mention, in some instances, they've literally written the book on fundamentals. In the case of Ed, achieving the #1 economist spot 44 times, which just got updated yesterday, by the way. It's not happened in a vacuum or cutting corners. Ed's analysis has been a beacon for institutional investors. For decades, the market has sought his perspective on what's happening in the economy and the impact across markets. As one who's most closely watched economists on the street, people listen to what Ed has to say, but they come back time and time again because of his ability to put everything into perspective, which is not an easy ask of an economist sometimes. In the case of Chris, his 40 years of fixed income investment experience has spanned research, investment, and portfolio management. Those who know Chris can attest to his belief that good research is the driver of good investments. In addition, through Chris's work with the Credit Roundtable, both as a co-founder and most recently chair, he's made his mark on the industry, advocating for investor rights and improving the outcomes for bondholders. And in the case of Mike, it's been almost 60 years since his contributions catalyzed a major transformation in global credit markets, effectively changing the structure of corporate America. The invention of high-yield bonds and innovative financial products allowed for new sources of capital to a universe of companies traditionally overlooked or avoided by investors. We're still seeing the effects of this today across leveraged loans, CLOs, and private credit. A believer that financial markets can change the world for the better and that research matters, Mike's work has fueled economic growth, it's created jobs, and it's allowed for companies to invest. Not to mention his tremendous work as a philanthropist, particularly in cancer research, and his most recent efforts in establishing the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream. So on to the main show, a little housekeeping. Your MC, Lisa, will be introducing each of our honorees before they say a few words themselves and accept their award. After each honoree has spoken, we'll close out the night with our president of FIAZI, Aaron Lyons, and a special President's Award. Our MC, Lisa Abranovich, she needs no introduction for this group. She first began as a daily newspaper journalist before moving to asset-backed securities trade publication. In August 2007, nothing was going on there. Having grown up in the newsroom covering fixed income markets, Lisa is the journalist that most of you now wake up to in the morning when she co-hosts Bloomberg Surveillance. And while I know she won't be putting anybody to sleep with her MC capabilities, she felt like the perfect foil to end your day and to honor our nominees. So I'm so pleased to welcome Lisa up to the stage. Have a fabulous time, and thank you.
Hello and welcome. I am really honored to be here today in a room full of the brightest minds in the industry and people who I think really do see the world in a way that I can relate to and enjoy. As I was preparing for this event, I kept being reminded by why in this world of tit-for-tat politics and geopolitics and things that you can't say and things that you can manipulate in different ways, I love fixed income. Everything about it. I love that it rewards participants for their rigor with facts rather than emotion. In a world beset by uncertainty, this is the one corner that usually makes mathematical sense as long as you just ask the right questions. The other reason why I'm drawn to the debt markets is because it attracts brilliant, creative people who are curious and want details, not just stories. They question each other themselves and ask themselves, what am I missing? What could go wrong? How could I see this differently? It is a rare and special group. It is an especially poignant moment to be having this gathering. Credit markets are undergoing yet another transformation of sorts now. You have the outgrowth in private credit. You have this question about how much some of the private asset managers are going to take over a lot of the lending capabilities of banks. And suddenly you've got yield. I remember all the years we didn't have yield. Now we have yield. You have things that are actually getting paid at a level, and the companies aren't going under. It puts an even greater emphasis on knowing the facts, picking the right companies, especially as we are facing off with a technological wave of development that potentially could be transformative and needs financing. When it comes to celebrating facts and understanding granular analysis, the honorees tonight are in a league of their own. And I should just say ditto to basically everything Jessica said, but here we go. Chris Gootkind, Ed Hyman, and Michael Milken are all titans in the industry, yes, but they're also teachers. Both Jessica and I picked this out. They've all been instrumental in the evolution of this field. They have literally and figuratively written the book, helping to lay the groundwork for how the market looks today and in the future. My father, who's a theoretical mathematician, once said to me that math models can be perfect, but if you get the parameters wrong, they're useless. Tonight's honorees are devoted to both the bottles, but more importantly, the parameters. These individuals have helped the rest of us see clearly. You don't need to hear more from me. These titans of the field are here with us tonight, and several others who have been honored in prior years, so let's bring them in. First up is Chris Gootkind. He did write the book on fixed income, namely the credit analysis portion, included in the CFA exam curriculum. Chris Gootkind has committed his 4-decade career in debt markets to ensuring that it functions well and with a level playing field. In his words, Chris went to a small liberal arts college as a math major, did a stint on the sell side, got a graduate degree, and went into investing. In my words, he graduated from Williams College and Harvard Business School before entering the investment world with Scudder Kemper Investments, then Wellington Management, and since 2010, Loomis Sales, where he currently is co-director of credit research. He helps run a team of more than 60 members with his energy and drive. While embarking by that career by day, by night, or maybe just on the side, he had a parallel path, laying the groundwork for a more efficient and effective investor market. Efficiency comes up a lot with Chris, as those ideals have clearly been a driving force for him. He helped found the Credit Roundtable in 2007, served as its co-chair from 2020 to 2022, and is currently a board member, and he doesn't even drink coffee. A lot has changed over his 41 years in the business. Markets move faster, there's more information, the size is many multiples of what it was, but Chris is consistent in his approach, saying he thinks of himself not as a legend, but simply as someone who just likes to look at markets and figure out how to make them better. Something only a titan of the field would say. And with that, I hand it over to the man himself.
Wow, just wow. Let me start by saying that this speech was written by me and not AI generated. Thank you, Lisa, for that very kind and generous introduction. As many of you are aware, Lisa is well known for her years of excellent fixed income reporting and analysis on Bloomberg Television. Lisa, I've admired your work from afar for a long time. I say from afar because I've never been invited to appear on Bloomberg TV. Just saying. When I look at the FIAZI Hall of Fame members, I see them in different categories. For example, investing legends like Dan Fuss, my longtime colleague and even longer time friend, and Howard Marks. Pioneers like Marty Leibowitz, Sidney Homer, Ed Altman, Fisher Black, Bill Sharp, Harry Markowitz, Bob Merton, Bob Litterman. Amazing sell-side research people I've known and greatly admired, like the late Jack Malvey, Marty Fridson, Joyce Chang, Rick Reeder, now on the buy side at BlackRock, Lori Goodman, and the late Margaret Cannella. Or heads of fixed income, CIOs or CEOs of major investment firms, like Larry Fink, Mary Miller, and Dana Emery. People who are so accomplished and well-known. This includes my fellow honorees tonight, Ed Hyman and Mike Milken. Congrats to both of you. I'm here to tell you that I'm not one of them. I believe I was elected in the nice guys who contribute to the profession in myriad ways category. I'm beyond grateful to FIAZI and incredibly honored and humbled by this recognition. And I'm so touched by people who are here tonight to help me celebrate, family, friends, colleagues, industry peers, past Hall of Fame honorees. I'd now like to spend some time sharing with you my career journey. As Lisa said, I was a math major, theoretical, not applied, who also took a few basic econ courses. I wanted to work on Wall Street, but job offers were tough to come by in the very high inflation, high interest rate period of the early 80s. Out of college and not really knowing the difference between a stock and a bond, I was hired in a rotational training program at a smallish firm named Maybon Nugent. Ended up on their corporate bond sales and trading desk. I told my mom, who was a librarian and didn't know much about business, let alone finance, that I got a job on Wall Street. She told all her friends I was a stockbroker. There I got great training and experience on the bond market from the sell-side perspective. However, I found Wall Street to be, understandably, very transaction-focused, and I decided I preferred to be on the so-called buy side, or investment management. After 3 years on Wall Street, I went to graduate school for an MBA as Lisa mentioned. Coming out of B school, I was hired as a credit analyst at the venerable investment firm Scudder Stevens & Clark in Boston. After a time covering financials, autos, and asset-backed securities, I was promoted to head of credit research and later the lead portfolio manager on a large research-managed corporate bond account. I found all the work to be challenging, rewarding, humbling, and fun. Earlier in my tenure at Scudder, while finishing my CFA, I started teaching a fixed income review course for other CFA candidates, which I did for several years for what was then the Boston Security Analyst Society, since renamed CFA Society of Boston. I was active with CFA Boston for many years and joined the board in 1999. I served on the board for 12 years where I met and got to know Dan Fuss and served as chair from 2007 to 2008, which was, as we all recall, quite a scary time in our profession. In '98, Scudder was acquired by Zurich Insurance and merged with Kemper Investments, which Zurich had bought a few years earlier. The culture changed and there were multiple reorgs. During this tumultuous time, I and my friend and then colleague, Bob Persons, who's here tonight, offered a number of what we thought were good suggestions to fixed income leadership around strategically reorganizing the group. With a figurative pat on the head, we were described as endearingly naive. While I'm smiling now, that term has stayed with me for 25 plus years. Shortly thereafter, Scudder Kemper experienced additional management changes and reorganizations. My job was relocated, and I left the firm in '99. Disillusioned and stressed out by that experience, at the same time my wife and I were having childcare issues, I took a self-imposed sabbatical for about 6 months and was a stay-at-home parent. It was a needed break, and I very much enjoyed it. My kids, who were 4 and 6 years old at the time, would probably give me a grade of A- or even A. My wife, she'd probably give me a B- or maybe a B. After recharging my batteries, I interviewed at Wellington Management for a credit portfolio manager role. However, they ended up hiring me as head of fixed income research for all credit-related asset classes. I was in that role for 6 years before a reorg that I helped develop essentially eliminated my position. I was then made a credit portfolio manager working on some very large sub-advisory portfolios. Roughly 4 years into that role and surviving the GFC, I was heavily recruited by Loomis Sales to be their director of credit research. And I want to give a shout out to recruiter Sarah Burley-Reed from Spencer Stewart, who's here tonight. I liked being a portfolio manager, but realized my heart was more in research, where I thought I could have a greater impact. Given Loomis's reputation as a premier credit-focused investment firm with excellent people and culture that I surmised from knowing Dan through CFA Boston and from my 19 interviews, I made the move. I've been at Loomis for 14 productive and enjoyable years. I now have a co-director, Shannon O'Mara, who's here tonight, who's been a great partner of mine and is also making huge contributions to our profession through a program she created 10 years ago that's developing a large and growing pipeline of talented women. Over many years, I've done a lot of work with the CFA Institute, in particular helping develop agendas for, and on occasion, participating in CFA fixed income conferences. 2000 FIAZI Hall of Fame honoree Marty Fridson and I did a session on credit analysis back in '02. I also served on the board of their week-long financial analyst seminar. Shortly after joining Loomis, the CFA Institute asked me if I'd be interested in writing a new version of the reading on credit analysis that all the CFA candidates use in studying for the exam. Frank Fabozzi, who's a 2002 FIAZI Hall of Fame honoree himself, who'd seemingly written every book on fixed income investing, had been the previous author. So I was flattered to be asked and enthusiastically agreed to write it. This was another example of my being endearingly naive, as I very much underestimated how much work it would be, even with a big assist from several of my Loomis research colleagues. That said, it's been extremely gratifying to know that, in at least some small way, I've helped thousands of people learn more about credit analysis and prepare for the CFA exam. And I'm sure that the CFA 1 level exam's disappointingly low pass rate over the past several years in no way reflects the quality of the chapter on credit analysis. I'd now like to shift my comments to the Credit Roundtable. The Credit Roundtable, or CRT for short, was formed in 2007 following repeated incidents of bondholders being burned by LBOs and other actions that weakened protection and transferred value from bondholders to shareholders. How many of you remember Blackstone taking EOP private, which involved playing off the long maturity bondholders against the short maturity bondholders? Anybody remember that one? It was coercive, abusive, and beyond egregious. This behavior started with private equity firms, but unfortunately has expanded. Through education and advocacy, the Credit Roundtable's focus is to ensure a well-functioning corporate bond market, such as enforcement and protection of bondholder rights, investors having sufficient time and disclosure to make well-informed decisions, covenants that actually protect us from abusive behavior and aren't circumvented, and so on. We are not a lobbying organization. A few years ago, after building up sufficient recognition, we added the tagline, "The voice of the buy side." I was a founding member and served as chair or co-chair of the Credit Roundtable for our first 15 years, from 2007 to 2022, including co-chair the first few years with my longtime friend and 2017 Hall of Fame honoree, Dodge & Cox CEO Dana Emery, who's here tonight. I'm still on the board and very actively involved. Bonds are contracts. Management works for the shareholders, including activist investors. The only duty they have to us bondholders is to meet the terms of the contract. Let's never forget that. The buy side is notoriously, and at times, frustratingly fragmented. Issuers, their bankers, and PE sponsors have used that against us and to their benefit. There's strength in numbers and working together. Even if we compete for performance, clients, new issue allocation, and so on, I firmly believe in the benefits of legal collaboration and cooperation in fulfillment of our fiduciary duty to our clients. In fact, I have an expansive view of what is our fiduciary duty. Acting in the best interest of our respective clients includes work that the CRT has done and will continue to do. The Credit Roundtable developed and distributed an influential white paper on model bond covenants. We've written many opinion pieces on corporate actions, bond tenders and consents, and so on, that we felt were egregious or coercive or violated certain rules and regulations. We've also built strong relationships with regulators to advise them on fixed income market-related matters and propose rules and regulations, as well as with major Wall Street firms. We now have 40 members, insurance companies, public pensions, traditional money managers, small, medium, and large, whose combined fixed income assets under management exceed $4 trillion. The rise of passive investors, index funds, ETFs, and other strategies that are just trying to replicate a bond benchmark serve as a significant impediment to a number of our efforts. As passive investors, they are by definition price and structure takers who may not care, at least to the same degree, about bondholder rights, a fair and well-functioning new issue process, covenants that actually protect us. However, I'd argue that passive investors should also take an expansive view of fiduciary duty and focus on and care about the same issues that the Credit Roundtable members do. Liability management exercises, while helpful in keeping or at least delaying stressed companies from filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, are increasingly becoming another tool for companies and activist investors to hurt bondholders and transfer value from us to them. We need to be more vigilant about this. I'm also very concerned about the latest trend in credit investing called lender-on-lender violence, which pits one class of creditors against another. We must work together to counter that. Tonight I'm appealing to any and all of you fixed income managers in attendance whose firms aren't members of the Credit Roundtable to join our cause and become a member and encourage others to do so as well. I'm extremely grateful to my bosses and senior leadership at Loomis Sayles, as well as at my former employers, Scudder and Wellington, for their support in recognizing the value of the work I've done on behalf of our profession. Without that, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. On special occasions, such as retirements, weddings, significant anniversaries, and birthdays, I've been known to write and deliver a poem. To me, this event is clearly a special occasion. Here we go. Returns in fixed income aren't what they used to be. That said, it's still a great and challenging profession for thee. I was fortunate to start my career in the halcyon days, and I urge all of you to give back in any number of myriad ways. As a former boss once said, I may be endearingly naive. However, making markets work better on behalf of our clients is what we must always believe. Quant and AI are both having their day. However, good fundamental research will always hold sway. With more PE involvement and the birth of lender-on-lender violence, we must work together to demand stronger covenants and avoid silence. Bondholders are now at ever greater risk of getting battered. It's why groups like the Credit Roundtable have never more mattered. As the voice of the buy side, we've made great strides. While there will always be more to do, the Credit Roundtable's success to date fills me with immense pride. I'm grateful to those who've helped me over so many years, including colleagues, sell-side and rating agency folks, and industry peers. I dedicate this honor to family and dear friends, including those who are with us no longer. Your support, wise counsel, and love have no doubt made me stronger. Thank you.
So pretty. Congrats. Let me move this way. More.
I never thought I would hear lender-on-lender violence in a poem. Next up is a man who talks softly and carefully, and whose words carry huge impact. When I asked him to describe what he does, he said, "I'm a teacher." The man is Ed Hyman, who is chairman of Evercore ISI, vice chair of Evercore, and head of the firm's economic research team. His purpose, in his words, quote, is to make complicated things understandable. This goal dates back to his upbringing in a family of educators and is a thread through his time at the University of Texas and MIT, when he began his career as an economic consultant at Data Resources Inc. from 1969 to 1971, and then C.J. Lawrence from 1972 until he founded his own business in 1991. Early on, he faced the challenge of trying to make his research relevant to stock pickers. They just basically wanted to know, how do I sell this thing? His words, he needed to survive. So he needed to make it simple and short and addressable for them to be able to bring to their clients, and not necessarily an economic tome with lots of jargon. Of course, he also happened to be very good at picking out the important themes and tidbits. As Jessica mentioned, he is ranked #1 in the Institutional Investor Poll of Investors for Economics 44 times. The latest ranking came out yesterday. The current landscape for research has changed quite a bit, and yet Ed, with all of the new technologies and all of the new information, still stands out among the pack. Ed, congratulations.
Yeah, I left my poem. Yeah, that was tough to follow. So this is a treat for me, although it doesn't. I don't know where to put it. I live in the city, so it wasn't hard to get here. Can you guys see me okay? Claire, what is the score? 4-0 Yankees. So I think I want to thank the committee for nominating me, but I don't really know this group. But thank you. And it's special to be honored, and Chris and Mike, very special to be honored with you guys. I know that, and you, Chris, you listed the previous people, and it's a daunting list. And I'm pretty sure I'm the least deserving person on the list. But I'm here, and it's a pretty difficult backdrop. My wife and I were in Tunisia last week, and she fell in a gladiator operation and broke her foot. And so She was supposed to be here tonight, but instead she's going to get an operation tomorrow at 12 if you want to check into HSS. So that's that part. And Halloween's coming up. She always takes care of everything, including the candy. And I just found out this morning we hadn't ordered any candy. So tension is rising. But I'm happy to report, if you want to come to my apartment building, we got candy. And then I've been, completely unnerved by the Yankees. My son Mac went to the game last night, so that was the good part of it. We'll see about tonight. And then we have the election coming up. I don't know how you feel about all this, but it's nerve-wracking. And then for me, there's this dinner. So, Lisa, thank you very much for trying to make me feel more comfortable. Before I go any further, I know that you're not really here to honor me. I'm here to be honored, but this is a great organization, and you're here to celebrate what you do. But before I go any further, I want to present my table partners. My wife isn't here, as I explained, and in her place is the great Oscar Schlotterbeck. No applause needed. Really, it took me about a year to learn how to pronounce his last name, but I got it down. And Oscar's just been ranked #1 in thematic research in the II team. First time for that, so I'm happy. I have Prue and Joseph are here, and I had to pay them quite a bit to come, and they're also leaving 2 beautiful kids at home. And then Mac and Cameron, thank you both so much. Cameron just flew in from Las Vegas to be here. And then I still needed more oomph at my table. So I asked Mark to come, and he's our director of research. And he's some way talked his daughter into joining us. So thank you very much for that. And Mark's research team this year came in #1 of all the firms on Wall Street. The #2 firm is J.P. Morgan, and the difference in size is, 10 to 1 or? Anyway, you're really punching above your weight to do that. And then I have Marcelo here with his lovely wife, Jasmine. Marcelo is head of our sales group, and he's been at the firm for less than a year. I don't know if you noticed, Mark, but ever since he came, we did better. I reviewed history a little bit for this organization, and you may know that Marty Leibowitz was the first honoree in 1995. And I don't know how many people know Marty Leibowitz, but he's a giant. And so I've frankly read a lot of his work recently and looked at some videos he had done. And for me, a lot of his most important work is in portfolio construction. And he makes the point that it doesn't really make any difference unless something really big is going to happen. And so I'm leaving this with you to decide what's really big, and if something really big is going to happen. Maybe Mike, you might share a few thoughts on that. But I called up Jim Grant because he's my best guy that worries about things. And he's mainly worried about the budget deficit, which I wouldn't rate on my list as something really big. But in terms of what I do, that's really what I think I get paid for, to try and spot something really big that's going to happen that's, negative. When I got the word that I was being honored here, I really didn't know what FIACI was. And so I called up Henry Kaufman, who I know well, and I noticed first off that he was a little surprised that I had been selected. But he was very emphatic that this was a great thing and I should do it. So here I am, and I'm a little surprised, like I've said 3 times. But speaking with Henry reminded me about his great call for interest rates to go to 20%, which they didn't quite get there, but they came close. And that was in the early 80s. That was, in some way, we survived it. I always was amazed at his talent, because he developed a real following. He had a weekly news piece sent out on Friday. It would move the market. And I've been now doing this work for 50 years, and I've never moved the market once. So I should end the way I started by thanking you for being here. And Lisa, thank you for the nice introduction. I hope you all have a nice evening, and I hope the Yankees win tonight. One step closer. Yes, please. Perfect.
And last, but absolutely not least, is Michael Milken, who essentially created the credit market as we know today, particularly for speculative grade loans and bonds, but really the whole concept of how we understand and evaluate risk. After graduating from the University of California, Berkeley, and Wharton, Mike started his career at Drexel, Harriman Ripley, Drexel Firestone, then Drexel Burnham, trying to keep track of all the Drexels as they changed their ownership. He tracked it all. When he began a 60-year journey through the industry, the highest paid people on Wall Street were in sales. The lowest paid were those doing research. And they often based assumptions on information that was inaccurate, like the bond prints in the 1970s at the New York Stock Exchange. Mike was struck by the inaccurate evaluation of risk in markets at the time, and all countries carried top credit ratings. He mentioned that to me, and I thought that was kind of amazing. US, Venezuela, didn't matter. Even if basically you had them businesses who didn't have access to credit, but who had viable business opportunities. Mike understood this concept, and he understood the concept of mathematical assessment, but he had to convince a lot of skeptical investors. He spent many months on the road traveling around the country to deliver presentations to potential buyers, and even if they didn't believe him, he considered it a success, because when he was right, they then might give him another thought the next time he went around. In doing so, he ended up raising money for a lot of the modern telecommunication systems and infrastructure projects that we now rely on. Today, his alkalites run the biggest private equity and debt companies out there. Today, more companies are owned by private equity than are public. Increasingly, private asset managers are taking on loans once dominated by big banks. This made a big impression on me. It's so clear that Mike thinks of finance as a way to change society, and he is committed to that ideal. His philanthropic efforts developed in tandem with his financial career. He founded the Milken Family Foundation in 1982. He's the chair of the Milken Institute, which hosts 250 events every year. Faster Cures, he is the founder and the chair. It works to speed progress against different diseases. Prostate Cancer Foundation. He co-founded the Melanoma Research Alliance and the Milken Institute School of Public Health at George Washington University. His most recent effort, I've heard, is actually beautiful in Washington, D.C., and that I've been really encouraged to go see it, the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream, across from the Treasury Department. Mike has a motto that truth eventually wins out. And tonight, we salute his quest for truth, for facts, and for laying the foundation of markets that have been fundamentally transformative.
So Lisa, thank you for those kind words, and for me it bookends 60 years. Many of the past honorees, I remember numerous debates with them over this period of time on financial markets, credit, and other issues of the organization, and it's great to be here with Chris and Ed today. I don't even know how many years I've been reading Ed's work from that standpoint. But when I say bookends, for me, my goal in life was to run the space program in the United States. And Sputnik went up in 1957, and I wrote a letter to the president telling him I was ready to be the first head of NASA that was being formed. I was 11, but I never got a call. But I went to Berkeley really with the idea that I would run the space program, and a belief as a young person that it was extremely important that human beings be on another planet or in another solar system. In the millennium of time, if something happened to Earth, the trillions of planets and stars would never know, and still might not know that the human race ever existed. I have two friends, Elon Musk and Yuri Milner, that have taken up that cause. And when we eliminate cancer as a cause of death, I told them I would join them in those efforts. When I went to Berkeley shortly thereafter, it was the first year the baby boomers went to college, 1964. And it was this was the first group of Americans whose parents told them that one person could change the world, that you were not dependent on the government for survival as the country was during the Depression and World War II. And so the first group that was born after World War II headed to college. And the free speech movement started shortly thereafter at Berkeley, and one of my first financing assignments at 18 years old was to raise money to bail 1,500 students out of jail. It was peaceful, and many of the issues of that day were who should publish the student newspaper, who should have a right to speak on campus, etc. But my career plans changed on August 11th, 1965 in Los Angeles, when I was home visiting when the Watts riots began. Vietnam was in full flame at the time, but you didn't have to go to Vietnam to see armed personnel carriers on the street. The city of dreams, the city of the entertainment industry, was on fire. Hard for me to understand a city I grew up in not feeling this discrimination on fire. I shortly thereafter met a young African-American man who told me the building he worked in had burned down. He didn't burn it down, but he didn't stop it. He was married with a child, had no job, and had no money. That his father never had a chance at a loan because of the color of his skin. And he wouldn't in his lifetime either. Seemed pretty irrational to me. And Gary Becker, who I became lifelong friends with, wrote a book on how irrational behavior could be rational. So I went back to Berkeley, changed my major to finance, and began to study credit. At 19 years old, after spending my life really from 8 years old studying facts and data, I discovered that everything everyone said about credit was wrong, including some of our past honorees who then changed their opinions. And so what was considered the best credit was the worst. As Lisa mentioned, sovereign debt. And if you traded sovereign debt in the 70s, you had to pretend it was always worth 100 cents on the dollar, no matter what it was worth. Everything was rated AAA. And what did all the data tell us? And thanks to a gentleman ahead of the Cleveland Fed who analyzed every single bond issued from 1900 to 1944, you discovered even during the Depression, the spreads were too wide. And so everything everyone was saying was wrong. And it made you really think at 19 years old, who was actually doing any research? And I discovered very few people ever done research, and this is why this honor means so much to me, and I thank the organization. Everybody was selling, everyone was telling you things, and if you tried to quiz them on who actually ever did any work, they had someone told them or something this, or they read it, or they saw it. But Wall Street and finance was not heavily based on data at the time. And when I went to decision to go to Wharton, I made the decision because my plan was to go to Wall Street. And there were very few people who were math majors, as we've heard before from Chris, and the financial community. One day I'll write a book, People Say the Darndest Things. I'll never forget with one of the leading money managers, when I asked him, what happens if you made 100% one year and it went down 50 the second? What was your rate of return? And he told me, well, let's see, 100 minus 50 divided by 2, you made 25% a year. And so this was really the financial community heavily in the 60s. And as I made the decision to go to work at Drexel as a consultant in '68, I made that decision because Drexel at the time was the leading equity research firm in our country, led by Paul Miller, Jay Sherrod, Clay Anderson at the time. And what I discovered was the compensation of the firm was first, as Lisa said, sales, second, traders, and third, research. And so I decided I'd conduct a study of the customers as to why they were doing business with the firm. Number one reason they were doing business with the firm was research. And most of the salesmen just picked up the phone, and I discovered, and those that have joined me tonight, 80% of all the salesmen's calls were incoming. Imagine a business like that. So they were coming, they read the research, they gave them orders, and they were order takers. And so my decision was we needed to invert the pyramid in the financial community where research was the foundation. And then if you did research and you had an idea, could you buy it or sell it? So you needed trading. And last came sales. And I visited with one of the largest firms, and I asked him, what are you doing on your research? This was 1970. He said, well, here's what we do. We trade during the day, and if we're long at night, we try to figure out what it is. That firm is not in business today. But it's been a long journey from that period in 1970 to today. Fixed commissions on Wall Street. You want to buy $1 million of stock, you pay $10,000, 1%. Your portfolio turns over twice a year, 4% in transaction cost, 4% of your return from buying, and selling at the time. My own firm, which was the leading equity research firm, I discovered they didn't even look at the capital structure of a company. And so Ed talked about, in his introduction, being number one in institutional investors. So one of our analysts was the number one aerospace and airline analyst. And he was recommending buying airlines. It's 1970 in America, and airlines are in trouble. We had to invent an entire new security airline equipment trust, mirroring railroads in order to finance them. And many of them had convertible bonds selling in the 20s. And so when I noticed that he was recommending the stock, I went and visited with him, and I asked him, I noticed you're really high on this stock. Are you aware that they have convertible bonds trading at 25 cents on the dollar? He said, no, he told me he didn't know they had convertible bonds outstanding. So the look at the entire capital structure was really focused more on high-grade debt, spreads off governments, and stock. In my own firm, I asked them to conduct a study. I wanted them to go back 4 years and tell me what was the bond rating of every stock they recommended you sell. Now, in the 60s and the 70s, you used to be able to put out sells on stocks. Not so easy today. And in China, they've outlawed all sell recommendations. And what they discovered was the average rating on the stock they recommended selling was single A. And the average rating on the debt of companies they're recommending buying was double B. So my point was that the past is always highly rated, and the future always has risk. And one of the greatest risks is buying high-grade bonds. And Chris talked about one of the issues that's extremely important, and that is covenants. Buying an investment-grade bond and then discovering that the person buying the company uses your debt as the bottom part of the capital structure at that time. So today, when I look at the objectives we set out, I really had 6 objectives. 1, to make research the foundation of the investment in the financial community. And as this group is represented tonight, that has become a reality in conjunction with rating agencies and others today. 2, to build a trading area. If you wanted people to invest, they want to be able to buy and sell. 3, we needed 10,000 investors worldwide, not 10. So as Lisa meant, I spent years going out trying to convince people that 99.5% of all the companies in America which weren't investment grade were investable at that time. Then getting issuers to believe. 5, the securitization. So if you didn't have the capability of analyzing every individual thing, we would securitize them. You could buy a portfolio. And whether it was auto loans or mortgage loans, and I called my lifelong friend Lou Ranieri, who's recovering today, to see if he'd join us tonight. But the fight to securitization and the legal issues, et cetera, that went on for more than a decade, and the work that Lou did to lay that groundwork. Next, private equity, the outgrowth which began in the 70s, to link management and ownership together. Throughout the 1960s and early 70s, the utility curve of management and the shareholders separated dramatically. And so how could we bring those together? All of these things have become a reality, but it takes individual events to change the world, and it takes individuals who are willing to take that risk to make that happen. And so beginning in the 1970s, I would go to every event and ask people, how many of you went into finance to change the world? In the 70s, when interest rates were so volatile, I might get 30% of the people say they went into finance to change the world. And that number has decreased every decade. 2 weeks ago here, I spoke at a group, and less than 1% of the people raised their hand to say they went into finance to change the world and to create the opportunities for access to capital, etc. And I challenge all of us here tonight, again, to just remember how access to capital can empower new entrepreneurs, new ideas, new industries, and the importance to make that happen today. There are other events, as I mentioned. For me, Sputnik and the Watts riots. I got married 3 years later, August 11th, 1968, so I would never forget in my mission. And it was somewhat back-ended 20 years later when we had financed Reg Lewis and committed $1 billion to him. I remember Henry Kravis told me Reg had no credibility with them. And I told him he had credibility with me, and since we were putting up the money, that's all he needed to do. But Reg died early in life from a brain tumor a few years later, and really never had a chance to play the back end. But if you travel throughout the African American community today, 35 years later, many of them think of Reg Lewis as Jackie Robinson for finance today. The growth of this business can be traced really to two major events that occurred in the 1970s. One, the failure of the Nifty 50 investing. The idea that you could buy 50 stocks, hold them for the rest of your life, never sell them, and retire wealthy. And many of the trust departments were leaders in that area. Well, over a 10-year period of time, you lost close to 90% of your money adjusted for inflation in the Nifty 50. There were great companies like Walmart, but there were also companies, Polaroid, Kodak, Avon, and many others in that group. And as the PE ratios went from 66 to 11, it was difficult to get a rate of return. And so if I could lose a large percentage of my money and trust banks, the growth of money managers began. Shortly that after in the mid-1970s. And the second event that occurred was the 1974 period, which for many of you here I would suggest is the most important period in the post-World War II period. The stock market went down almost 50% in 1 year. Business Week covered December, no one would ever buy a stock again. Interest rates doubled, put on credit controls where your bank could not loan money to new customers, and bonds that traded for 100 cents on the dollar in 73 traded for their coupon, still paying interest in 74. An unleveraged portfolio of non-investment grade debt between 74 and 76 yielded 100% rate of return, unleveraged. And every single person who was quite skeptical of these ideas became a believer, and corporations, because of the volatility of interest rates, beginning in 77, started selling debt. So it was these two things that dramatically changed the money management business as we know it today. Going forward, what are our challenges? What is truth? What are facts? Does data mean anything? At one of our many conferences a couple years ago, one of the Congress members who's on the Finance Committee, we were trying to show what was about to happen to Social Security. At the end, I saw that she was on the most prestigious station, Bloomberg, saying, these are the facts, but isn't the way it's going to turn out. Numbers can lie. And so I was just thinking about the world today as we look at numbers around the world and data. In my opinion, the importance of financial analysts has never been greater to try to figure out what is real versus emotionalism or selling today. Ed said, what are the big things that he's trying to identify? Are our policies, what's going to happen to the dollar as a reserve currency could be one of Ed's big things over the next 5 or 6 years. But it's really important that we grow young financial analysts who have the courage of their convictions based on their research, not the conventional wisdom. So in closing tonight, I thought I'd read a quote to you, which I've kept over the years. And you can guess who this is from. If I were to try to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I do the best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing it until the end. If the end brings me out all right, what is said against me won't amount to anything. If the end brings me out wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference. Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. And I think the role of analyst is to understand that you can unleash the major assets of the world, human capital, social capital, that the U.S. is so strong on, but they need access to financial technologies, financial instruments to make them become a reality. The United States estimate value of human and social capital is estimated to be 1,500 to 2,000 trillion. 10 times all the financial assets of this country and 50 times the economy. And so understanding that that is the real strength of a city, a nation, at this time, a state, it's extremely important that our financial capabilities unleash that potential to sustain the United States. And if we don't sustain the United States, the ideal of the American dream, I don't believe there's another place on earth that we will find it. So thank you for choosing a career in finance. And when you talk to your children and grandchildren, hopefully they'll understand how important your decision is. Thank you, and I'm honored.
Thanks, everyone, for those wonderful speeches and for joining us this evening. I'm Erin Lyons, the president of FIAZI, and just want to thank everyone for being here. But each year at the Hall of Fame dinner, the president of FIAZI recognizes a member of our organization who has gone above and beyond to support FIAZI and advance our mission. At our core, our goal is to educate our members on topics central to the fixed income markets. We're an organization largely run by volunteers, and consistently delivering unique and engaging events is no small feat. It requires a deep understanding of key topics, a strong network of experts, a boldness to reach out to people you might not know, and the patience to manage never-ending scheduling conflicts. For many years, one individual has shouldered much of this responsibility, drawing on his experience as a managing director and head of research at TD Asset Management, and his earlier tenure in the fixed income department of Merrill Lynch Investment Managers. He's built a network that has spanned more than 30 years. He served as president of FIAZI from 2012 to 2014, and we have long been fortunate to benefit from his passion from this organization. As he retires from his active role in the fixed income markets and passes the programming chair baton along, we're proud to honor Ralph DeCesar
with the 2024 President's Award. You started clapping before I could finish, but Ralph, thank you for all you've done to ensure FIAZI remains a relevant and reliable part of the fixed income market discussion. We're going to miss your active presence in our board, and we wish you much relaxation and happiness as you begin this next chapter. In closing of this evening's event, I want to acknowledge 3 of our former Hall of Fame members who passed away this year: Jack Melvey, Patty Cook, and Mac McEwen. When an organization has been around as long as ours, inevitably, some legends are no longer with us. Through the Hall of Fame, we strive to always remember and honor their contributions. Now, to extend our heartfelt thank yous. First, thank you to our honorees. You've dedicated your careers to fixed income. Tonight, we honored 3 exceptional individuals whose contributions to the markets have been nothing short of transformative. Ed Hyman of Evercore has set the gold standard in economic research, consistently providing invaluable insights that guide investors and policymakers alike. Mike Milken, often referred to as the one who created what we now call the high yield market, revolutionized the financial landscape with his innovative approach to capital markets, creating opportunities for countless businesses and really reshaping modern finance. Chris Gootkind has demonstrated unparalleled expertise and leadership in fixed income management, continually driving excellence and fostering a culture of integrity and innovation. Each of these honorees has made indelible marks on our industry, and many of us would not be here without the risks and chances they took to change our industry. Your belief that something different could be achieved is why we're all here. Second, thank you to all of our sponsors. We at FIAZI appreciate the support of our event and our honorees. We're a nonprofit organization, and tonight's event allows us to continue to do what we love, our mission of education, and it allows us to span more than 50 years as we celebrate that milestone in 2025. We look forward to seeing many of you at our upcoming events. To Mark Schenkman, thank you for hosting us here this evening. We're very fortunate to have your support to allow us to enjoy such a wonderful space. Third, a special thank you to the FIAZI board for the countless hours of volunteer time, and especially to Jessica Broughton and Mark Howard, who are the board members responsible for tonight's event. While I may hold the title of president of FIAZI, we all know who runs the show here, which is Lauren Nauser. Lauren. Without your direction, we wouldn't be here, and we sincerely thank you for all that you do for FIAZI and all of us personally. As Jessica mentioned in her opening remarks, it takes a committee to choose who our honorees are. For this, I thank Marty Fritzen, Lori Goodman, Larry White, Monica Agarwal, Jessica, and Mark Howard. Lastly, before I close, I encourage you all to check out FIAZI's new website. We figured our 50th anniversary was a good time to update the look and feel of the organization, and we have all of our upcoming events listed there. In addition to this Hall of Fame, our next Hallmark event is our Women in Fixed Income, which we host in partnership with the New York Fed. It's our 7th year hosting this, and I'm pretty sure we're able to do Gold Vault tours again this year, which is really an exciting opportunity. We're fortunate to have such a strong partner in the Fed, and we're excited to bring this best-in-class discussion to a wide audience once again. In April, we're highlighting our Sustainable Finance Conference in partnership with Fordham University. So please join us. This is a really fun, exciting night to celebrate the legends in the market, but we frequently have events where we continue to, as Jessica said, geek out about fixed income, and we'd welcome your participation. With that, I'd like to bring our 2024 Hall of Fame dinner to a close. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy your evenings.